I'm Nima Rajan. The Canadian Union of Public Employees says it plans to challenge the back-to-work legislation that is heading to the Senate today. The union, representing more than 1,100 dock workers striking at the Port of Montreal, says that the bill is unconstitutional. It says the dispute was sparked when the Maritime Employers Association began imposing extended workday hours without consulting workers. The House of Commons approved the bill early yesterday morning, but it must still be passed by the Senate. Medical experts say cancer patients could be left underprotected from COVID-19 if they get only one shot of the two-shot vaccines, like Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. The president of the Canadian Association of Pharmacy in Oncology says Canada needs a national policy to prioritize cancer patients so they can receive their second shot early instead of waiting for the current 4-month interval between shots. Many cancer patients have a reduced immune response to the vaccine and would need the booster to strengthen their ability to fight the virus. The provinces are reporting 305,605 new shots in arms for a total of more than 13 million doses given. Health Canada is anticipating a total of 36.5 million vaccine doses from Pfizer-BioNTech, Moderna, and Oxford-AstraZeneca by June 30th. Major General Danny Fortin, the military commander handling logistics for Canada's vaccine distribution program, says that means there will be enough vaccine delivered to give a first dose before Canada Day to every adult who wants one. Numbers from Health Canada suggest seniors are being vaccinated in higher numbers for COVID-19 than they were for the flu. The country's Deputy Chief Public Health Officer says almost 9 in 10 Canadians over 80 have now received at least one dose of a COVID-19 injection. Health Canada's annual flu shot survey found about 7 in 10 seniors were vaccinated for the flu this year. A memorial honoring 6 Canadian Forces personnel killed in a cyclone crash last year is now open for public viewing. The accident occurred on April 29, 2020, when the military helicopter crashed near its host ship in the Mediterranean, killing all on board, including 2 Royal Canadian Navy officers and 4 Royal Canadian Air Force officers. Final reports on the cause of the crash have yet to be released by military investigators. A Nunavut biologist who studied polar bears has died after a helicopter crashed near Resolute Bay. The Sunday crash killed Marcus Dyke and 2 crew members. Mr. Dyke lived in Igloolik and worked on polar bear research across the territory for the government of Nunavut. The cause of the crash is still under investigation by the Transportation Safety Board of Canada. The Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada says a shortfall in federal funding, pledged earlier this month, has left it on the verge of laying off staff. The association says the $2.4 million provided this year isn't enough to provide targeted help, noting it had asked Ottawa for just over $68 million over 3 years. It says the Indigenous tourism sector is in danger of collapse. Legal experts say those who hold parties in violation of public health orders, where people later die of COVID-19, could end up facing manslaughter charges. Earlier this week, a Vancouver man was warned by a BC provincial court judge that he could be facing such a charge if anyone at the party he hosted got COVID-19 and died. Still, law professor Isabel Grant at the University of British Columbia says it would be difficult to prove such a case because the Crown would have to show that the person got COVID-19 from being in that room. The Conservatives are expected to continue to press for Justin Trudeau's chief of staff to testify at the House of Commons Defence Committee about what she knew about a complaint against Canada's top soldier 3 years ago.
Over the past months, Canadians have heard from members affected by sexual trauma and sexual misconduct. They've shared their heart-wrenching accounts. To every member in the Canadian Armed Forces, to every person in the Department of National Defence who has been affected by sexual harassment and violence and felt that we were not there to support you, I'm truly sorry.
Aaron O'Toole was Canada's Veterans Affairs Minister at the time of the complaint. He says he acted appropriately, saying there were no formal allegations, just a rumor about Mr. Vance that he wanted to be investigated. Well, meanwhile, the federal Conservatives' environment critic says the Liberals have come up way short after promising in 2019 to plant 2 billion trees within a decade. Dan Albus says it's been 2 years and the Liberals are acting like they still have another decade to accomplish the lofty goal. To reach that goal over a decade, around 33 million trees would have to go into the ground each month in a tree planting season. And in 9 years, that number grows to about 37 million trees. All right, stay with us. We take a look at top national headlines after the break as BC's homeless park advocate calls on the government for permanent housing options. Meanwhile, Alberta introduces tighter COVID-19 restrictions amid a surge in cases, and Saskatoon's mayor calls for more public health restrictions. These stories and more coming up next on the Forum Daily, everyone, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. A spokeswoman for people camping out in Vancouver's Strathcona Park is calling on the government to provide permanent, affordable housing options for campers, not just shelter spaces. Chrissy Brett was responding to BC Housing Minister David Eby's ultimatum that campers can either choose to accept the housing they are offered or leave the park by the imposed Friday deadline. Police and neighbors have complained about crime connected to the park, while fire officials have voiced concerns about dangerous conditions. A warning is coming from a drug policy advisor to the city of Vancouver. Karen Ward says a dangerous drug is saturating British Columbia's illicit supply in much the same way fentanyl did several years ago. She says benzodiazepines or benzos make overdoses more complex because they are often combined with opioids but don't respond to the overdose reversing naloxone. The BC Coroner Service says tranquilizing drugs were detected in 51% of deaths in February. Alberta is targeting COVID-19 hotspots with tighter restrictions that include at-home learning for junior and senior high school students and a ban on indoor fitness and sports. Premier Jason Kenney says enforcement of public health measures will be stepped up and selective regional curfews will be considered if numbers go higher. Vaccination clinics are now in business at Cargill in High River and JBS Canada in Brooks, Alberta. The plants, which process about 70% of Canada's beef, were hit hard by COVID-19 last year. The vaccinations for the more than 4,000 employees at the two plants will take place over the next 2 days. The mayor of Saskatoon is urging the province to bring in more public health restrictions as COVID-19 cases rise. The city is nearing 500 active cases, and the highly contagious P1 variant was detected in Saskatoon earlier this week. Mayor Charlie Clark says the city's emergency management director and local medical health officers have expressed the same concerns to the government. Mr. Clark says he worries that Saskatoon is on the brink of Regina's dire COVID-19 situation, and that city has an active case count of 794. The Manitoba Ombudsman has released a report about a government privacy breach involving the health information of nearly 9,000 children. The report says last August, Children's Disability Services sent health information of 8,900 kids to around 100 services agencies and community advocates in an email. The report says the breach was due to human error and the agencies that received the information deleted it, but the department didn't fully follow privacy policies and needs a stronger commitment to protection. Ontario's Long-Term Care COVID-19 Commission was expected to submit its final report to the provincial government today. The report was launched to examine what went wrong in the province's response to the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2 sets of interim recommendations have already been released, and the latest report is expected to include further recommendations. New COVID-19 projections suggest Ontario's stay-at-home order is helping to bring down case counts. But the province's science advisors who issued the projections say more limits on essential workplaces are needed to rein in the virus's spread. The science table says case counts are flattening, but there are still areas of growth in some hotspots. The group says the number of patients in intensive care continues to climb, increasing pressure on the healthcare system. Walmart Canada is building a new major distribution center in Moncton, New Brunswick, to service stores in the region. It will ship fresh and frozen groceries to the retailer's 43 stores. The $56 million facility will open in the fall of next year. It's expected to employ more than 200 workers. A bomb disposal unit has removed an unexploded 500-pound World War II bomb found in the vicinity of Shabong, Nova Scotia. The team used an excavator to remove the unexploded ordnance from a pond. A unit from the Royal Canadian Navy's Fleet Diving Unit then transported the bomb to a local quarry for disposal. Islanders who purchase electric vehicles can receive a provincial incentive retroactive to April 1st of this year. The PEI government says purchasers can receive $5,000 for both new and used electric vehicles and $2,500 for plug-in hybrids. Islanders who purchase an EV can expect to receive a free Level 2 charger as well. The province says the incentives are part of the island's goal of reaching net zero carbon emissions. Uber wants to get more drivers to join its ranks. The ride-hailing service is offering sign-up bonuses and other incentives to get people on board as drivers. Uber says it reached an all-time high in bookings last month. The spike in the use of ride-hailing services comes as people continue to avoid public transportation and restaurants because of the pandemic. All right, more top stories coming up after the break. The island of St. Vincent has been hit by heavy flooding and mudslides after volcanic eruptions. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate approves a water resource bill, and Amazon's profits continue to soar amid the pandemic. Stay tuned for more news from around the world coming up after the break on the Forum Daily. Everyone, stay tuned. Heavy rains have poured down on the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, causing flooding and mudslides in areas already burdened by heavy ashfall from the eruptions of La Soufrière volcano. Authorities say there have been no reports of deaths or injuries. There are reports of caved-in roofs and some structures wrecked by landslides and flooding in rural areas, and authorities say bridges have also sustained damage. The U.S. Senate has given approval to infrastructure legislation that serves as a possible way to build consensus around President Joe Biden's jobs plan. The Drinking Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Act of 2021 authorizes about $35 billion over 5 years to improve leaky pipes and upgrade facilities, and is widely supported by lawmakers and their states back home. But the measure can also be a key part of Biden's $2.3 trillion proposal to invest in roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. Amazon's pandemic boom isn't showing signs of slowing down. The company said yesterday that its first quarter profit more than tripled from a year ago, fueled by the growth of online shopping. It also posted revenue of more than $100 billion, the second quarter in a row that the company has passed that milestone. Amazon is one of the few retailers that has benefited during the pandemic. Well, hugs and handshakes with Mickey Mouse will be a no-no as Disneyland reopens today after a 13-month COVID-caused closure. The iconic theme park in Southern California will swing open its gates to in-state visitors only. The number of guests will be capped at 25% of the park's capacity. And now over to Michael A. Charbon with a report on other top stories from the U.S.
Thank you, Nima. This week in Washington signaled President Joe Biden's first 100 days in office. Regarding COVID-19, over 30 million Americans are now fully vaccinated, while 42 million have at least one shot. With an estimated 2.3 million shots per day being administered, hospitalizations and deaths are down overall, which is very encouraging news for Americans. In politics, Democrats hold a slim majority in the House, while Republicans hold a slim majority in the Senate. This political standoff continues to hinder any substantive governmental bipartisan work. This week also signaled President Biden's first speech to a joint session of Congress, groundbreaking in many ways as only 200 were in attendance compared to the regular 1,000. But the most striking image was President Biden flanked by a female vice president and a female speaker of the House, both epic and definitely inspiring to so many. Biden's message, an American blue-collar blueprint to build America. For over 1 hour, President Biden spoke to sanctions against Russia as punishment for the election interference, Green New Deal elements that have been put in motion, and where Democrats propose a huge $6.3 trillion financial rescue package of stimulus money to kickstart America's economy. Proposed were the American Rescue Package, an infrastructure package, a jobs plan, and an education plan, to name just a few. Progressives in the Democratic Party are delighted in the way that Biden has moved fundamental progressive change policies forward. In contrast, the Republicans' response was somewhat less optimistic. Many Republicans point to the immigration crisis at the border, where more illegal border crossings occurred in the first 3 months in 2021 than of all of 2020. This while border cities and governors sound the alarm of mass illegal entry and a deluge of unaccompanied minors. Republicans point to election statements that hinted to open borders, free health care, and free community college as inviting this problem with added financial burden to Americans. Fiscal Republicans question the trillions in spending they label as lined with more pork than COVID-focused initiatives, which they estimate to be only at 9%. They also sound alarm bells that the proposed increase of the U.S. corporate tax rate and revamping of the death tax and capital gains taxes are all seriously ill-timed at a time of recovery. Finally, Nima, with the Derek Chauvin trial delivering convictions on all charges in the murder of George Floyd, America's sigh of social relief was short-lived, as 3 new police shootings of African-American suspects ignited renewed social unrest. With a federal FBI investigation into police practices underway, anti-police rhetoric and continued stoking of mistrust while vilifying all police continues. This week, law enforcement disclosed shocking statistics revealing that nationwide there is an alarming increase in shootings, murder, and crime in major cities across America. So, Nima, below the 49th parallel, polarized political media echo chambers continue to gaslight their bases, triggering further political, social, and racial unrest, which only erodes America, not building bridges and paving a road to unity and recovery. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Michael. Stay tuned, everyone. We've got more international headlines coming up after the break. Scientists are appealing to India's prime minister to release virus-related data. Meanwhile, the lawyer for Russian opposition critic Alexei Navalny has been detained. That and more coming up next. Stay with us. Indian scientists have appealed to Prime Minister Narendra Modi to publicly release virus data that would allow them to save lives, as coronavirus cases have climbed again. The latest spike in cases is prompting the army to open its hospitals in a desperate bid to stem the rising tide of a massive humanitarian crisis. India's pandemic response has been marred by insufficient data, and the online appeal, signed by over 350 scientists today, asks the government to release data about the sequencing of virus variants, testing, recovered patients, and how much people were responding to vaccines. A lawyer representing Alexei Navalny, Russia's imprisoned opposition leader, has been detained in Moscow. The news was broken on social media by close friend and colleague Evgeny Smirnov. Mr. Smirnov noted that St. Petersburg-based lawyer Ivan Pavlov was detained earlier this morning after his hotel room was searched. He says Russia's Federal Security Service was involved. Mr. Pavlov is accused of disclosing information related to a police investigation, an offense punishable by a fine, community service, or up to 3 months detention. France is holding a national ceremony to honor a police official who was stabbed to death inside her police station. Authorities say it was an Islamic extremist attack. Prime Minister Jean Castex is leading Friday's ceremony in the quiet town of Rambouillet, southwest of Paris, where the police official was killed a week ago. The suspected assailant was shot and killed by police. It was the latest of multiple attacks in recent years targeting French police. Indonesia's military and family members have paid their final tribute to the 53 submarine crew members who died when their vessel sank and broke apart in the depths of the resort island of Bali. Indonesia is planning to recover the submarine with the help of a Chinese Navy ship that is capable of lifting objects over 3,000 feet deep. President Joko Widodo met with the families of the 53 crew members on Thursday and expressed his condolences. Israeli medical officials say at least 44 people have been killed in a stampede at an overcrowded Jewish religious festival in northern Israel. Tens of thousands of people, mostly ultra-Orthodox Jews, had attended the celebrations. Witnesses say the stampede began when large numbers of people tried to exit the site, passed through a narrow tunnel-like passage. People began falling on top of each other near the end of the walkway as they descended slippery metal stairs. 2 Canadians were reported among the dead. A plane carrying the bodies of 3 Europeans killed by jihadists in Burkina Faso this week while they were filming a documentary on wildlife poaching has landed in an airport near the Spanish capital. The bodies were flown overnight from the capital of the African nation of Ouagadougou on an Airbus provided by the Spanish military. 2 Spanish journalists and an Irish conservationist were killed Monday when the anti-poaching patrol they were on with a special military wildlife force was ambushed by jihadists in eastern Burkina Faso. 1 Burkinabe soldier is still missing and 6 others are wounded. A South Korean activist says he launched 500,000 propaganda leaflets by balloon into North Korea in defiance of a new law that criminalizes such actions. The law has invited criticism that South Korea is sacrificing freedom of expression to improve ties with North Korea. Police couldn't immediately confirm the launches. The activist said the 10 balloons he sent this week carried leaflets criticizing Kim Jong-un's government and $5,000 bills. Officials in Brazil say they have stepped back from the edge for now. Burial and hospital services in the South American country are no longer at risk to collapse. Still, experts are warning that Brazil could continue exercising caution or risk a renewed spike or a prolonged period of heavy losses. Mexican authorities say that delays in the delivery of 1.5 million doses of Chinese Sinovac vaccine will mean that almost 1.3 million Mexicans won't get their second doses on time. The health department said Thursday that the delay belonged or beyond the recommended 35-day interval between the 2 doses will not affect the effectiveness of the vaccine. The department did not give a reason for the delay. Mexico has so far administered 12.2 million doses of 5 different vaccines. Girl Scout cookies are now winging their way to customers in the town of Christiansburg, Virginia. Commercial delivery drone company Wing started talking to Girl Scout troops that have been having a harder time selling Thin Mints and other cookies because fewer people are venturing out during the pandemic. Beyond the popular cookies falling from the sky, Wing has used drones to deliver to the lightly populated area since 2019. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you could visit our website, thenewsforum.ca, and be sure to follow us on our social media handles. We're available on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also watch all of our commentary programming on the News Forum YouTube channel. All right, thank you for joining us on the Forum Daily, everyone, and have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.